everyone. Welcome to Zonan Canada. I'm your host, Jesse Betteridge, and this is a podcast focusing on the connections between anime and Canadian media. And today we are doing a retrospective on an anime series with very important cultural connections and very important cultural relevance to Canada. Maybe one of the most important. We are talking about the 1979 anime adaptation of Anne of Green Gables, or Akage no Anne in Japanese, or La Maison au Pignon Vert, as it is known in French. And joining me are two of the best guests I think I could possibly find to talk about this. We have Patricia Gosselin of the Nadeshko Club and a very passionate fan of Lucy Maude Montgomery. Patricia, thanks so much for coming back on the show.
Thank you very much. How are you?
I'm doing well. I hope you've been keeping well since I had you on last. Wasn't that long ago, just a few months.
I'm fine, yeah.
Okay, and also back on the show is Dave Merrill. Dave Merrill of Cornpone Flicks fame, of Anime Hell fame, and one of the two proprietors of MrKitty.net. Not to be confused with MrKitty.org, which no longer exists.
MrKitty.net, thank you. Hello.
Dave, welcome back to the show. It's great to have you, as always.
Thank you for having me.
So yeah, despite being one of the most famous literary classics in English-speaking Canada, Akage no Anne only aired on TV in French-speaking Canada, which is kind of funny because in my understanding is that in Quebec, it wasn't really considered a literary classic, at least not up to that point.
Yeah, true.
If anything, it actually probably had more cultural relevance in Japan at that point, back in the late 80s and early 90s, than it did in Quebec. I think a lot has been said about the cultural importance of Anne of Green Gables in Japan. One of the most obvious signs of this is the fact that the 1979 series is not even the only time that Anne Shirley has appeared in anime. There was also the 2009 Before Green Gables anime, which was made as a, part of a tie-in for the 100th anniversary of the novel. And of course, the 2025 series Anne Shirley, which is running on television and streaming internationally right now. So yeah, before we go any further, I was just wondering if you two could just, if you want to introduce yourselves to any degree and just let us know what your sort of personal background with Anne of Green Gables is. Patricia, would you like to go first?
Yes, of course. Well, thank you for inviting me. Yes, I'm part of as you said, I'm part of the Nadeshko Club, based in Quebec City. I've been an anime fan for like maybe 40 years or so. And I used to watch Akage no Anne, the old series, in 1989 on Radio-Canada. And it was actually my first encounter with Anne of Green Gables. I remember the Sullivan TV series that my mother used to watch, but at that time maybe I was too young or I didn't really watch it, but I was hooked to the anime.
Yeah, they both ran at pretty much the same time. I think
more or less, yeah. I think so. Maybe a few years before we had the Sullivan series, but not shortly after we had the anime. And I fell in love with at that time. I fell in love with Anne, and because I was born in eastern Quebec in a town called Rimouski, which is about 3 hours from New Brunswick. So we used to spend our summer vacation in New Brunswick, actually, with my sister and I. And because I started to like the anime so much, my parents, they took us to the Anne of Green Gables house on Prince Edward Island. And I still remember that summer. I was so happy because, you can actually visit a place that you saw in an anime.
Yeah, basically. And it was like, I guess that would have been kind of like an anime pilgrimage. And at that point, was there like the full recreation of Avonlea, or was it just the house? I can't remember the timeline of how the tourism developed.
Oh, actually, at that time, if I remember well, it was actually the house, the Green Gable house, which is which belonged to the McNeil family on Prince Edward Island, which were relatives to Lucy Maude Montgomery, actually. And it's funny because I bought the book, actually, the souvenir shop besides the house, because I didn't have the book then. And Anne became very popular in Quebec because of the anime, but also because of the Sullivan show. But like you said before, it was not well known. My father knew it because actually there was a 1964 version of the novel that came, which was translated in France. It was actually a book from we call this the Bibliothèque Verte. It's the Green Library. It was a collection of books for children, and it was called Anne et le Bonheur, which means Anne in happiness. It was not called Anne of Green Gables at all.
Yeah.
And my father, he remembered the story. He said he read it, but it was not well known back then. It was just a regular novel. But after the show, after the Sullivan Show, and especially after the anime, most people of my age now they discover Anne with the anime actually.
Yeah. So a France, like a France French translation of the novel had been made, but there hadn't been a Quebec French translation until around that same time, I think, that the Sullivan series and the anime came out. From what I understand.
Yeah, the voices in the anime are the same than in the Sullivan series.
Most of them.
Most of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I noticed a couple differences. Bernadette Morin plays Miss Stacy in the live action, but not the anime version.
Yeah, sadly.
Which is
she used to be Minnie Faye.
Yeah, she's Minnie Faye. Like I was surprised that I was a little surprised by that. Dave, can you let us know your, just your general introduction and your background with Anne of Green Gables in general, whether it's the anime or the book or the many incarnations, and there's a lot of them.
The many versions of. Mm-hmm. No, I'm from the States, so it's not. Anne of Green Gables is not like this national icon down there, of course, the way it is. Little House on the Prairie, I think, occupies that space in the American mindset, I think, kind of, sort of, maybe. I think I was aware of the Megan Follows CBC series that aired on PBS in the States. I'm pretty sure, but I'm like, well, whatever, I don't know. I don't believe I was aware there was an anime series based on the novel until much later, until, the 90s, certainly. And, of course, you do research and you're like, oh, Nippon Animation did all these World Masterpiece Theater shows, and because you get into that, or I got into that mainly because of Future Boy Conan, which I first saw in Spanish on the Spanish language cable television. But I started looking into all these other World Masterpiece Theater shows. I'm like, well, here's this show that Isao Takahata directed, that Hayao Miyazaki worked on. I should check this out, right? And I moved to Canada. And when you're in the GTA, you drive around, or at least spend a lot of time driving around the countryside, just looking for antique malls and things like that. And I noticed there were some signs on the road saying Lucy Maude Montgomery home, and I'm like, she didn't live here. She lived out east. She didn't live in Ontario, but apparently she did live in Ontario, as I found out. And eventually, I've been writing about classic anime at letsanime.blogspot.com for a long time. And one of my friends here in Toronto told me, Dave, you need to review Anne of Green Gables. You really need to review it. So I'm like, okay, fine. I'll do it. I went to a convention that year. I found, actually, they happened to be selling some Anne of Green Gables laser discs. I'm like, well, I guess I'm going to write about this show now, And I wound up watching the entire show. I went to Lucy Maude Montgomery's home. Actually, I visited. She lived for a while in a small town kind of near Uxbridge, Ontario, which is sort of east of here. I visited that home. She also lived basically in Toronto. I went to that neighborhood. They're very careful to not tell you exactly what house she lived in, because I think people still live in that house. But they have a historical plaque saying, she lived in this neighborhood. And I watched the entire show. I read the book. I bought the book, the first Anne of Green Gables book. I bought actually at a thrift store really close to where the house in Ontario where she lived, because you can find Anne of Green Gables in every bookstore that I've been to in Canada has a copy of Anne of Green Gables. It is not hard to find, and it's a great book. It's really well written. Like, if you haven't, if there's a person listening to this who has not actually read Anne of Green Gables, take an afternoon, sit down, read the book. There's a part they're talking about, there's a fire. They've got a fire going in the hearth at Green Gables, and she describes it as the sunshine of 100 summers being distilled from the maple cordwood. I'm like, did she just get away with this? Can you actually do this? It's like, she did get away with it. It's a terrific book. And what's interesting to me as an adult coming to it as an adult, I can see where you're reading this. You're reading Anne of Green Gables as a child, and you really identify with Anne. You're like, oh, I get what she's going through. I understand this. But as an adult, you read it and you're like, this is the most annoying child in the world. Like, how can anyone just relax? Stop being so dramatic. Everything is not so important. Just calm down. But when you're a teenager, obviously everything is the most important thing in the world, and you feel things so strongly. And as an adult, you're like, oh no, you will get some real problems later. You only think you got problems now. Just hold on. And another thing I kind of came to me, and it's not really, it's sort of Anne of Green Gables adjacent, but she's an orphan. She kind of gets parceled out to this farmhouse to sort of, they're looking for a boy to help them out on the farm. They need labor. And there are so many, there were in that time period of like the back half of the 19th century to pretty much the first half of the 20th century, thousands and thousands of orphans were basically shipped to Canada as labor. They were like, hey, you've got a kid, he needs somewhere to live, somewhere to be. We have farms in Canada that need help. Send them over to Canada. And a lot of those kids, they wound up sitting on railway platforms wondering what their life was going to be like, just like Anne.
Yeah, and you're talking about orphans, and you know why in Japan Anne of Green Gables was so popular, because after the war, all these orphans, they could relate to the character of Anne, actually.
Yeah, that explains a lot of you understand world masterpiece theater a lot better when you realize that, Japan was filled with many orphans who would relate to these children in these literary adaptations.
Yeah, and many orphans had to live, with relatives or uncles, aunts, and similar to the story of Anne.
My dad actually was raised by what I always thought was his grandmother, but was actually like his great aunt. And that was in the 1940s. So it's, it happens. It happens a lot. It happened a lot everywhere during the first half of the 20th century, because if you were working you're in a lumber camp, well, you can't bring your kids to a lumber camp. You're working in a coal mine, you're working out in the oil patch. Now, these days, it's like your children have to go somewhere, right? And a lot of times wasn't anywhere else for them to go. They had to become orphans, whether they had parents or not.
Yeah, I started watching a few episodes of Before Green Gables, which was the prequel. Well, the prequel that was done as an anime in 2009, but it was based off a book that was written by a different author, Budge Wilson, for the 100th anniversary. As a whole big promotional tie-in for a book that's supposed to be in the public domain. Kind of funny how these projects are built despite that. And what really struck me, at least watching a few episodes of the anime, which I have to say so far I'm not liking it very much, and maybe I'll watch more. I was thinking we'd do a whole episode about it. I'm kind of having second thoughts now. But the way they just keep, at least in the first little bit, mythologizing the like Anne's parents and just constantly raising the question of who were Anne's parents. And so I'm half expecting them to reveal that they were like SHIELD agents or something. And I feel like it's really drifting away from what the original book was trying to capture in the situation that many of these orphans were being raised through at that point in history. And I'm just like, we've lost the plot a little bit, or at least what this is really supposed to be capturing here. For me, with the original story, I never read it growing up. It was never even really a thing, even in school. Maybe it's because I grew up in Vancouver and we're a little more culturally disconnected from that. I mean, in like Ontario, you're more connected. People would be more connected because Lucy Maude Montgomery, she lived in the Toronto area, so she has a history there. My mom grew up in Toronto, and she actually went to school with one of Montgomery's descendants, who my understanding is still kind of manages things through the estate, which again I find a little strange considering that the book is public domain now. It always struck me as being a very, very close-knit kind of thing with a lot of people there. It felt, she was a real presence in that community. In Vancouver, it's just like it's this thing from back east, kind of. I mean, I watched the anime fan subbed purely because it was something directed by Isao Takahata. That was my interest in it, Isao Takahata. As I'm sure everyone knows, we haven't mentioned it here yet, he is one of the Studio Ghibli guys, one of the founders of Studio Ghibli, and this was his third world masterpiece theater. He had done Heidi, which we done an episode on previously, and also aired that's another show that aired in French-speaking Canada, and was dubbed in Montreal as well, and also Marco, the other world masterpiece theater series he had worked on. And this was back when he was in movie jail, I understand, because Horace, Prince of the Sun, had been such a big failure that he wasn't allowed to direct movies. So he had to focus on TV series for a long time before he was allowed. And I think Chie the Brat was the first movie he was allowed to direct again after he made these TV shows.
Well, they talk about, there really weren't a lot of anime feature films being made between 1970 and like the Yamato boom. Like they just weren't making them. Maybe a few Toei Manga Matsuri films here and there, but the kind of big 2-hour plus long epics that we're used to from the 80s, those just did not exist in the 1970s.
The anime Rama films, that's a whole different thing. Yeah, a lot of stuff that was going...
Again, those were failures, right?
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, a lot of theatrical stuff at that time was compilation movies or things based off of TV shows. But yeah, with me personally, I watched the show because of that, and I read the book purely as a way because I wanted to deepen my appreciation for the TV show. And it really struck me like just how incredible this series was as an adaptation. It's like when you watch the TV show, and it has to be one of the only adaptations out there where watching the TV show is basically an equivalent experience to reading the book. Like what you mentioned before, Dave, about the type of incredible prose. It's like that's that type of thing. It's not just, the dialogue. It's not just the events. It's not just even just the character nuances and development that's all captured perfectly in the anime. It's like that the things that are expressed in that prose are transplanted in some way in the TV show so that you walk away with the same kind of feeling. Yeah, it's really amazing. And that was my big takeaway watching both the series and reading the book.
And a journalist from Radio Canada wrote an article about it and said that the 1979 version, the anime version of Anne, was probably the best version of all the adaptation we had, the most accurate to the book.
Wow.
Because Anne with an A, I don't know if you watch Anne with an A, the new series.
I haven't checked it out. I understand it deliberately kind of takes a different angle with the book.
Absolutely, yeah. And I like this version, but it's too... they wanted to... I know that the producer wanted the little girls today, they have to relate to Anne, so we have to change this and that, but Anne is already like a character, that you can relate. Even little boys can relate to her. I mean, you don't need to change the character. She's already amazing the way she is. You don't need to make any change or put any agenda into your show.
Well, Anne is such a national icon that there are going to be people who are going to come to the character and want it to reflect, like, well, it needs to reflect modern whatever's happening right now. It's like a lens they can look at Canada through or whatever. And it's like, okay, I guess, but I'm not, do that with your own, come up with your own character and do that. It's like, don't leave Anne alone, is what I'm saying. Let Anne be Anne.
And in my opinion, Anne is still today probably the best representation of a young girl who's probably dealing with maybe ADHD or maybe on the autism spectrum.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And it's very rare to see a character like this even in literatures today. I'm looking at the books my daughter is reading, and she feels more related to Anne than the little girls in the books today. Because Anne is so... It's amazing how she was represented,
That's the thing. It's written so, just personally and honestly and realistically, the way that all the characters are done, but especially Anne. And it's a story. It's not like, hashtag autism representation kind of thing. It's just sort of an honest and well-observed depiction
Yeah,
of a
absolutely.
person with these traits. And I know many have said that it sort of reflects how Lucy Maude Montgomery herself was, possibly in some ways as well. So she's just kind of giving you maybe a look at how she looked at the world as well. But yeah, that's definitely a good takeaway from the story. I agree.
And Mark Twain, he was a fan of, Mark Twain, who wrote, of course, Huckleberry Finn and
Mhm.
Tom Sawyer. He was a fan of Lucy Maude Montgomery, and his career was well established, well before her. But he wrote her a letter because he said Anne was so a character that he loved, and he said, in 100 years, people will still talk about Anne, and I guess he
He
was
was
right.
right. He was right. I feel like there's a lot of like Mark Twain would have. You can find a lot of comedy in just comedy, but drama or whatever happening in a small town between people who live in a small town and what happens in a small town. And that's Anne of Green Gables right there. It's the concerns of real people or actual people.
Yeah, they're still very realistic, even if it's not 100 years ago.
Yeah.
You can still relate to these characters, so they were well written.
Mark Twain, who famously had a cameo in the anime film Dagger of Kamui, by the way.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's
He does
interesting.
show up. He shows up. Delivers some advice to the ninja hero of our film.
And of course, Anne of Green Gables has a very long legacy in Japan as well. So this series, it ran in Japan on Fuji TV in 1979 throughout the whole year, January to December, because that's how those World Masterpiece Theater shows worked. And and very notably, the production of this was a giant disaster, resulting in multiple episodes that are apparently nearly unwatchable, or at least that's what the Anime 2 Days background write-up of this
I
series would lead you to
disagree.
believe.
Like, we had a conversation about that, and that blog is like, well, this obviously they had so many problems, and this episode is really terrible, and the animation is terrible, and you can see where they were really struggling. And like, I watched that episode, like waiting for it to get terrible, and it does not get terrible. They work around it. They work around their problems, and mainly because the backgrounds are so gorgeous
Yeah.
that you're okay just looking at these backgrounds. It's like it's
The
fine.
walls are covered with wallpaper in all the settings in this. And in outdoors, everything is just a well observed detail of the actual setting. That's part of why it's such a strong adaptation, is because just Prince Edward Island is just brought to life as just in an incredible way.
It's rooted in the real world.
Yeah.
A lot of people will talk about like the Studio Ghibli aesthetic and this and that, but I think it's the Isao Takahata aesthetic. That's what I think it is. Because he's like, you have to do this. We're going to concentrate on making this look real and grounded, and that's going to make everything else, it's going to sell everything else. Like the backgrounds are going to sell the entire show. And they do.
And with a lot of these World Masterpiece Theater titles, the title itself, or the anime itself, would be how Japanese audiences are introduced to the literature or the characters. Anne of Green Gables, I think, was one of the very few exceptions to that. Along with Dog of Flanders, I think those two were books that had a reputation before they were adapted into these year-long literary anime.
I think Little Women was pretty popular in Japan before
and
the animation.
Little House on the Prairie as well, but that wasn't a World Masterpiece Theater. That was that was the off-brand World Masterpiece Theater when they did an anime version of that one. Yeah, it was translated in Japan, the Lucy Maude Montgomery's book. Or actually, I don't know. Should we talk about that first, or should we talk about Lucy Maude Montgomery?
Sure.
I mean, she wrote this back in 1908 is when it first came out. It was told across 5 books because the first one was, of course, very successful. She was born in Clifton, PEI. And yeah, many have said that the story that she tells of Anne Shirley is very similar to her own. She was raised by her grandparents after her mother died, after she was born in Cavendish in PEI. Cavendish, is that roughly the area where they have the Avonlea recreation? It's in that area, isn't it?
Yeah, it's in that area. Cavendish doesn't exist in the book.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah. So Avonlea is like a stand-in for that.
It's based on the
That
Cavendish.
town, basically. And she had a lonely childhood, and apparently she would often create imaginary friends for herself, which is one of the most, which is how Anne's character is established at the beginning of the book. She did reunite with her biological father when she was 15 and moved to live with his wife in Saskatchewan, but they found that living situation did not work for them. So she moved back to PEI and became a teacher, which is, of course, where Anne Shirley's life goes across those books. Anne of Green Gables was her first novel, and it quickly became a big hit. And it brought a lot of attention just to PEI, and especially American readers kind of gained this perception of Canada as a whole of being like a place of a slower, more rural life. Because that's kind of how the island came off. And of course, that is not really true, but it just sort of create this, I guess, almost kind of pastoral interpretation of the area. She lived in PEI, took care of her grandmother until her grandmother died in 1911. Then she married a preacher, and they moved to Ontario, where she continued to write the novels, including those about the character of Anne, and well as many other characters that she created over the years as well. And during this, she had a lot of struggles with depression. World War I, in particular, had a great impact on her. And she had been supportive of the war from the beginning, but she kind of regretted this later as she learned of the horrible impact it had on, just the world and society as a whole. I think I haven't read a lot of her later books, but I understand that is a very common theme you see in a lot of her later work, and even a lot of the later books about Anne Shirley as well. Her whole career with Anne of Green Gables was mired in a lot of legal disputes with the publisher, who was underpaying her, and she was also very outraged by the first silent film adaptation of Anne of Green Gables in 1919, which changed the setting to New England and made Anne into an American.
How dare they?
I know, right? It's like producing an anime about Anne of Green Gables and having the entire cast be from Dallas, Texas. It's just outrageous. No, it's not. That's not comparable at all. But you have to have your anime dubbed in South Africa. That's the acceptable way around that, which is something we will also talk about later.
Yeah.
But in terms of sales, both in her lifetime and since, Montgomery was the most successful Canadian author of all time, pretty much. But because her books were seen as children's books, she was often dismissed by her critics. Yeah, she was found passed away in 1942 in her home. And apparently it was due to coronary thrombosis. Yeah, we learned much later that she suffered from depression. And a lot of this probably came because her husband was mentally ill, and she spent much of her life having to take care of him. Story of a very successful woman overall, but faced a lot of hardships and a lot of barriers. I do believe that she did overcome a lot of those legal struggles that she had with her publisher, though, and managed to get a lot of the money that she deserved. But it was a huge fight for her.
I did see a story where her husband was a minister, and he tried to run over another minister in his car. He got angry at another minister and tried to run him down.
Yeah, I think I heard about that. Yeah, it was a lot of stuff like that. That's
kind of awesome. I mean, it's terrible, but it's also kind of awesome.
Yeah, the man had issues, apparently, I'm afraid.
Yeah, was mentally ill, like you said earlier. But her story was, she said herself that her life was closest probably to Emily of the New Moon.
Yeah, when you read
Anne.
As you read more of her stories, they seem to become more and more autobiographical, and you definitely see that a lot in Emily of New Moon when you read that. And that was also adapted into an anime that we will talk about another day.
She did a lot. Because, she was forced I heard that she was forced by her publisher, because all her novels were selling so well. They said, oh, you have to write another story like Anne. And so she wrote The Story Girl and also Golden Road, which is, Sarah Stanley that you can see in the tale, Road to Avonlea,
mm-hmm.
which was used to make the series The Road to Avonlea. But it was never as good as Anne. It's just she was like almost forced to write it.
She's kind of being forced into a certain formula in a lot of ways, but she finds ways to differentiate and put her own voice into it, though.
One of the things I found out about while researching Anne of Green Gables was that the book was put on General MacArthur's recommended children's literature list during the occupation.
Mm-hmm.
And along with Little House on the Prairie, which was also on that recommended list. I want to see that entire list. I want to know what books Douglas MacArthur was recommending for Japanese youth. Like, I'm curious about that. I've never been able to find that list. I just know that this book was on it.
It was brought over after World War II, translated by a woman named Hanako Muraoka, who was working with Canadian missionaries because she was herself a Christian, and released in 1952. And it was a big success, and then was adopted in the school curriculum in the 50s, actually, and then it became more widespread as time went on. And from what I've read about why Anne resonated with children in Japan was not just because she was an orphan, and many other orphans could relate to a story about an orphan, but just because she was so talkative. She kind of symbolized a new era of how femininity could be defined, or even how a person can conduct themselves in society. I think she was just seen as a very refreshing character.
Yeah, and also the character of Marilla, she's at the beginning, she's a very severe woman, she's very she wants to discipline Anne and everything, and at the end she sees Anne as his own daughter.
Mm-hmm.
So that's interesting, because in Japan, especially back then, a child, has to respect adults. You don't talk to adults like you talk to your friends, or
Yeah.
and in the end, Marilla said to Anne, you're just like my own daughter. So it's you can see actually the perspective of Marilla changing during the novel, and it's a bit like what was happening in Japan. Adults were being a little more open to children and accept that children can talk and tell their own ideas. So that's interesting too.
And identifying the story through Marilla's perspective is a totally valid way of reading it as well. There's all sorts of sort of takeaways and interpretations. And Marilla, she's a very, very complex, pragmatic character who, her story arc plays out in ways that you don't really expect. And I could see that relating to Japanese society. That's an interesting point. I don't know if you guys have watched much of the new Anne Shirley. It focuses a little more on her vulnerabilities and kind of uncertainties that I think other versions have, and I found interesting. I think it has a pretty good take on the character in that version.
She's got to carry the whole story because she's the adult, because Matthew won't say two words.
Yeah.
He's like, well, I don't want to say anything, but so it's Marilla. She's got to do everything.
He'll run off and hide if he can.
Yeah, and Matthew is afraid of women.
Yeah.
And it's part, it's written in the novel. So I think in the Sullivan TV series, the actor of Matthew, he talked too much.
I think he's a weak link in that version. That version of Matthew Cuthbert. He's great in the 70s anime, though. They really capture. You really have to capture the subtle, nuanced traits to get Matthew right, and the Takahata anime does that marvelously. I love him in this show.
But I think they softened a lot Marilla in the new show, in the Anne Shirley show. She's not as severe as she was in the Takahata show, I think, in my opinion.
Yeah, she is definitely softened as well. But it still, I found it to be an interesting take.
Because I was a bit afraid of Marilla, in the 1979 show. Actually, when I watched it, I thought that the character of Marilla was terrifying. In the first episodes, I think, she was very...
Oh, yeah.
She looks so stern and severe, and...
Well, that's like when you're a child, that's kind of your nightmare, is that your parents are going to send you away and you're going to have to deal with these strangers who are going to be mean to you, I mean, that's fairy tale stuff, the hateful stepmother.
Yeah, exactly. Good point.
Patricia, I know we're not going to focus too much on before Green Gables from 2009 here, but I understand around that time you went to Japan and actually visited Nippon Animation while that show was either in production or had just come out. Is this correct?
It was in production. Actually, they were working, at that time, they worked on the episode 6 or 7, if I remember well. And it was almost like an accident, because we heard that there was an exhibition at the Nippon Animation Studio. There was an artist who painted scenes from the World Masterpiece Theater shows. And we wanted to see this exhibition, so we went, we started to go, and I was with my sister and my Japanese friend who act as a translator for us. And we went there and we saw the exhibition, and there was a man who came and he saw we were gaijin, we were strangers. So he said, "Oh, where are you from?" And we said, "We're from Canada." And he said, "Oh my God, we're working on the new Anne series. Do you want to see it? Do you want to see the studio?" And we said, "Well, of course." So we
Wow.
thought we were so lucky.
Did you know they were working on a new Anne series at that time?
Oh yeah, I knew,
Okay, yeah.
but I never I never expected that he would let us visit the studio. That was a big surprise. That's kind of a one in a lifetime opportunity.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
that's amazing. Yeah.
I mean,
and
getting a tour of an animation studio, like I was in Korea and Japan around the same time too. This is something I joked about doing, but like you actually had that opportunity. That's wow, that's pretty cool.
yeah, that's a big wow. And I was so happy. And I remember they were working on the sketch. They were working on they were working a lot with the computers. So and we saw actually how they did all the details, and of course they were working very hard. So we didn't want to interrupt anything, so we just passed very silently. And that was such an interesting opportunity. And the exhibition was very nice too. I don't remember the name of the artist. I have to. I took a few pictures. I can send them to you if you want. But yeah, that was amazing. And I think that's
That
because we were
show
Canadians also. That helps a lot.
that show was on our first trip to Japan. That before Green Gables, that was on television when we were in Japan. It's nice to turn on the TV. It's like, oh, there's that new Anne show people are talking about.
So again, I am skeptical that the production of Anne of Green Gables was as much of a travesty as some accounts have suggested. But apparently it was pretty rough with some very very tough deadlines. It was the first one that was actually under the title World Masterpiece Theater. Before this, it was Kalpis Children's Theater, or Kalpis. It had the Kalpis
Family Theater.
Kalpis Family Theater.
And then it changed to World Masterpiece Theater, and then in 1986 it changed to House Foods World Masterpiece Theater. Who knows what they're going to call it next?
Well, before Green Gables was the last one, it as of now it died under the House Foods banner. But yeah, it was a very difficult production. Takahata had brought in a lot of staff from his previous show Marco, and also Hayao Miyazaki's previous staff. Previous show Future Boy Conan, and Takahata initially didn't want to do this project. I would imagine there was a lot of expectations behind getting Anne of Green Gables right, because unlike a lot of the books that were adapted for this series, this is something that was already well known and very popular in Japan and had been for a few decades. And Takahata felt that the project was just not suited for animation. Obviously, he had to take a very different kind of approach than you would normally expect an animated series to take to make it work. And Hayao Miyazaki also agreed with him that it would not work in animation. And he also hated the book, apparently.
He hated the book, and he thought there was no action.
Yeah.
It was boring. Actually, he didn't like the character of Anne.
Yeah.
He thought she was ugly and boring, and
oh yeah, Miyazaki he actually left production after episode 15. So he wasn't there for most of the thing, but he directed the opening credits. And it's kind of funny because it's such a magnificent opening with Anne flying around on this carriage. But when you know that Miyazaki hated the book, it kind of comes off as cynical, because it's like, oh, he's just angry because she can't actually fly, so he's gonna make her fly. In this opening, it's like this is what I want this story to be. I'm curious to know what his opinion of Anne on the flying bicycle in the commercial was, because there's this commercial that was running around at the time.
Gotta say, the Laserdisc comes with some sketches, artwork and little pamphlets and stuff. And there's a sketch Miyazaki does of Avonlea, with here's Green Gables, here's this, here's that, here's the lake of the shining, et cetera, et cetera. And he's got an airplane in the illustration. It's like, come on, man.
Oh,
come on.
he's obsessed with planes. His
Yep.
family was building planes, and he said himself. He said, "I'm very good to draw engines and planes." And
It's my impression that he wanted to take the show and make it more fantastical. And Takahata's like, no, you're not going to do that to this show.
Yeah. Well, Takahata recognized that to make this show work, he'd have to double down on the approach that he took on Heidi, which is, capturing the everyday life kind of thing, and just finding depth in capturing the way people live their lives every day. And I feel he did this much more successfully in Anne of Green Gables, because World Masterpiece Theater shows are kind of notorious for having questionable pacing sometimes, because these books they adapt, they never really fit like 52 episodes. You kind of have to stretch it. You kind of have to make some stuff up. And I found that in Heidi the pacing was pretty bad a lot of the time. There are definitely moments where there's just not a whole lot happening. If you don't,
how many episodes is that show?
Heidi was 52.
Heidi?
So
yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot, and a lot of it depends on hoping that the audience wishes that they lived in the Alps. Although a big part of it a lot of it takes place in the city, but a lot of the really
we talk about like maybe Heidi is poorly paced. That show is ridiculously popular.
Oh
still.
yeah, well,
like for whatever reason, it's a hit.
Yeah, well, I mean that's how Japanese people know of Heidi, because it's the anime. That's it just it still has that pastoral appeal to it. And I think again it leans a lot on that. But you see this everyday approach taken to a new level with Anne of Green Gables, because it's just built into the way every action the characters make, even just the way Anne grows up and matures very subtly. Like every episode, her character design actually changes a little bit, and just like and you see her gradually age, and there's a lot of flashbacks in this show because there were a lot of production problems later that caused them having to pad things out a lot. But the flip side of that is that you see how Anne looked like 10 episodes ago, and it's so dramatically different from how she looks now. And it's like, oh wow, she's really grown up. They did something like Toei did something similar in Candy, but it's just despite the rushed production on so much of this show, the fact that they're able to pull off things like that and just sort of integrate everyday living, growing up, subtle, nuanced changes in the setting and the characters and everything. Takahata took on a huge task, and he succeeded wildly in so many ways in the way that he executed it.
I was just going to say, Anne's character designs, what I like about Anne's character design is she's got those circles under her eyes. And if you see actual children, kids actually have those weird, I don't say weird, but they have these circles under their eyes. And that's an interesting look that I don't know that other anime shows ever do. It's like, no, this is the way kids look. They have these circles.
Yeah, and Takahata, he said, he loves Anne very much because at that time he had an 11-year-old girl, and he said, she's exactly, she's like my daughter.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
and he said that Miyazaki, Miyazaki had a vision of women that were like a big how do you say that? They see them as ideal persons. He had like a view of women like they are always pretty and amazing, and Anne is not perfect. She's skinny, she has red hair, she has like big eyes, she's supposed to. Miyazaki said, she's so ugly. I cannot. I'm not attracted to her. But Takahata said, well, she's like a real 11-year-old girl. You have a strange view of women.
I think he does. I agree. I mean, you look at Nausicaa, and it's like this perfect, idealized, can do no wrong. Basically, it's Jesus. And it's hard to relate to a character like that, to be honest. At least for me.
In the Ghibli movies.
I kind of, yeah, especially. I kind of have, I don't want to say everything Hayao Miyazaki ever worked on suddenly becomes a Miyazaki thing, because that's the keyword that you put in your article to get people to read your article is Hayao Miyazaki. Every time he stubs his toe, there's an article about it. You know, he retires, he comes back, he retires, he comes back. Hayao Miyazaki is the only person. Like, used to be it was Osamu Tezuka, and now it's Hayao Miyazaki. And I don't know who it's going to be next, but right now it's still Hayao Miyazaki.
It's
It's like,
probably his son, Goro Miyazaki, probably, I suppose,
yeah,
but we're still not sure
maybe.
about this. But yeah, Takahata is very important too, and a lot of people don't even know who he was.
Exactly. I think a lot of times when people say, well, it's Miyazaki's work, it's not Miyazaki's work. It's Otsuka's work or it's Takahata's work, you know? But anyway, that's my
Exactly.
soapbox. Thank you. Hayao Miyazaki's had enough PR.
Yoshifumi Kondo was a really critical part of this production as well. I mean, I know that like the classic Ghibli character designs we see, it's largely like kind of Miyazaki's look, but he really nailed that kind of look, the finalized Ghibli look that we're all used
It's
to
Kondo.
in
It's
this
all
show.
Kondo.
Yeah. You would say it's more Kondo than Miyazaki?
I would say so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably yes. You know you know what they call the Ghibli style. You know the AI style that reproduce the Ghibli
Yes.
Oh
features.
my
Yes.
god.
That's more like a Yoshifumi Kondo style. You know,
That's
he
the
kind
Kondo.
of he invented this style. You know, where even adults look like children. You know, with very soft features. Yes, that's your Yoshifumi Kondo.
I don't. Sorry, Dave. I'm not sure if you brought up the trip that they all took to PEI, but in July of '78, right when the show was about to go into production, so that like this was real crunch time for them. Takahata and Kondo traveled to Prince Edward Island. Along with a couple of producers from Nippon Animation, they left they went to Prince Edward Island and researched the location as they had done for Heidi years ago when they went to Switzerland to do that scouting as well. And yeah, they took many reference sketches, and again, back then there wasn't a whole Avonlea recreation as there is today. But they went to a lot of the locations that are emphasized most in the book, and they made their own floor plans for the Green Gables house, based on the one which was in Cavendish at that time, and it had a lot of references for the tools and clothing. And there was this great travel program that came out in 1998 where Isao Takahata, he goes back to Prince Edward Island 20 years later to sort of explore the area
Oh yeah,
again.
you watched the video?
Yeah, that's
It's
Oh, I
very
haven't seen
good.
that.
it's really fun, and I just love how like giddish he is about Canada. He's like a big Canada nerd. He's like
Yeah.
if a Canadian kid who just discovered anime and thinks Japan is the greatest place in the world. He thinks that about Canada, which is kind of funny.
That's great. I'm glad that goes both ways.
And he went to Montreal also. He went to meet Mr. Frédéric Bach, who is actually Miyazaki's. I know Miyazaki and Takahata too. They are big fans of Frédéric Bach, which made the Man Who Planted Trees. So a big influence for them.
Yeah, it's really great to see those connections. That whole documentary is on YouTube if you want to check it out. It's or at least it
Oh, I've
was
got to
last I
watch
checked.
that.
That's where I got my copy from.
I think it's in Japanese only, and you have the Spanish subtitles. That's how I watch it now.
Oh, I have one with English subtitles. I can get that to you if you want, if it's not there anymore.
Oh, it's okay. I understand Spanish.
Oh, you
so
understand Spanish?
I
Okay,
didn't mind.
all right, yeah. And but yeah, so after Miyazaki left, though, like the production really started to be under more pressure. I mean, it doesn't. I would never say that this show looks bad. It always looks good. But they're definitely under more pressure after episode 15. You start to see more bits where there's some long drawn out shots with no animation. They start to lean on flashbacks a little more. There is one episode at about the halfway point where they just kind of give up halfway through the episode and make it a clip show. And it's fine. It's 50 episodes long. You're watching one episode a week. going back and playing the hits is not really a big deal. I mean, who doesn't want to see Anne bashing the slate over Gilbert's head again and again, right?
Sure.
That's my favorite scene.
It's
actually.
everyone's favorite. It's one of the greatest scenes in literary history, and this show did it the best.
If you watch an anime from the 90s, it's all like slow pans, characters talking with something in front of their mouth, every shortcut and cheat they can take. So when Anne of Green Gables starts doing it, you're like, yeah, okay, it's just normal. This is normal anime stuff.
Yeah. But later on, there is definitely more, there's more vivid animation in the first little bit. And as it goes on, you start to, there's more of a shift towards detailed backgrounds and more limited animation. But you don't notice because it's pulled off so well. Kondo actually got sick with a very, I think, lung disease when he was working on this, which is
I guess he had a fragile health already because he died in 1998, I think.
Yeah, sure. After he finished Whisper of the Heart, not long after the production of that film is sort of what killed him for the most part. So
I feel like they were kind of setting him up to direct, and he passed away. It's like the history of anime, I think, would be very different if he had not passed away.
Yeah, for sure. But and it's so.
He was supposed to be the successor of Miyazaki for Ghibli, the Ghibli studio. It's a big loss. I don't know if people realize it, but it's a big loss. Most people don't know about Yoshifumi Kondo. They hardly know about Takahata. That's what we said earlier.
Yeah, I remember when Takahata died, there were lots of news articles about his death, but you could tell when you read the news articles or looked at like the collages of images that they would use to demonstrate or to try to demonstrate his work with Studio Ghibli, that most of the people who would write those news articles didn't know who he was or understand what movies he directed or understand what his actual contributions or approach to animation were.
They only know him in relation to Hayao Miyazaki. Mm-hmm. Like everything exists strictly as a connection to Hayao Miyazaki. That's everything is in some way. It's interesting. You watch that documentary about Miyazaki, and every scene Takahata's not in, someone's going, "Where's Takahata? Is Takahata here? Yeah. Is Takahata coming?" Like he was an important man, and people just, at least like anime fans here in the West, kind of, he's not marketable.
I mean, Miyazaki idolized Isao Takahata. A lot of his worldviews were shaped by Isao Takahata. He's kind of imitating Takahata in a lot of the ways that he works and expresses his views. A lot of them.
I think Takahata was a great storyteller.
He was.
And Miyazaki, he said himself. He said, "I'm good to draw planes and engines and." And the rest is Takahata is the genius, behind all this.
I don't believe Miyazaki could have made that Princess Kaguya film that Takahata made, this last film. This beautiful film.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of my favorite Ghibli movie, actually.
Like nothing else out there.
Well, we can say that Yoshifumi Kondo had to finish some of his sketch in bed.
He was still sick. Actually, I forgot to mention that he did get sick during the production, but he didn't stop working on the show. He had this life-threatening lung disease, and he continued to work on it while he was getting palliative treatment at home. And people have said that this show would not have worked without him actively continuing to be involved with it to the very end, or he was still one of the forces keeping the show together, even when they're on these like incredibly tight deadlines. Because this guy was just superhuman. Not to validate his working on this while he was possibly dying at home, but it just shows just how incredibly committed these guys were. To
his wife was there too. Yeah, she probably helped. She was an artist.
Oh yeah. She what was her name again? I feel bad for not remembering her name.
No, I don't remember her name. Sorry.
I really like Eiko Yamada's performance as Anne. She is very high pitched. She is she's maxing out the treble when you listen to the soundtrack in Japanese on this. I can see why people find it to be grating, but I think she gives a very imaginative, very earnest performance. I like it a lot.
And it's interesting because you can see I think this performance was has such an impact that you can see, in Sailor Moon, the voice of Usagi. She sounds a little bit like Anne, and all the shoujo heroines, most of them sound a little bit like Anne, don't you think so? Very high pitch, and
Yeah.
speaking very very fast. And
Well, even before this show, Anne was like a template for shoujo heroines.
absolutely.
Like even this season right now, what's the Gorilla God's go-to girl? And like it has like a super generic, a very generic looking shoujo protagonist, and she's just like this girl with red hair.
Was
Yeah,
Anne the
and
first anime redhead girl, do you think? I haven't really. I should check that out because that may be a big deal right there.
I think.
do you
Because
mean
that's
real
the
redhead or
well,
red
yeah,
hair
yeah,
or
yeah. It's like
dyed
that's
red?
the stereotype for like the anime convention mascot is that it's an anime girl with red hair. I mean, every con has a mascot which is a girl with red hair, and I don't know why that is. Maybe it's because of Anne of Green Gables.
I'm sure someone has cataloged the history of anime redheads. Someone has to have done this.
And you have the Wendy's restaurant also.
That's right. That's right.
PP Longstocking also.
Oh, that's right. Miyazaki and Takahata were trying to do the Pippi Longstocking anime before this, but they couldn't get permission.
Yeah, I know the author of PP Longstocking. She was very she didn't want any cartoons over
She heard
adaptation.
about what Miyazaki did to the Moomins, and she didn't want any part of that.
Yeah. Yeah, she was afraid that it would be a failure. So.
They got a call from Tove Jansson. Don't let him touch it. He'll put tanks in it.
And you know that Miyazaki wanted Anne to have more actions, and
Yep,
Takahata
yep.
said no. We know Japanese people know a lot about the story, so we have to follow the
Oh my
novel.
god, if someone had let Miyazaki animate Anne in a tank, he would have done it. Like absolutely.
How much action? It's 1900 whatever, Prince Edward Island. It's not a place known for action.
I don't know, it's a rural place,
There
farms.
aren't any
And,
pirates.
no.
There's no naval battles. There's no fights. There's no it's potatoes. A lot of potatoes happening on PEI.
Yeah.
That's it.
I think the last thing I wanted to mention about the show's Japanese production is that it was supposed to be 52 episodes, but it was cut to 50, which was that was a rare thing to happen back then, apparently, to not fulfill your episode order. I mean, we had situations like Mobile Suit Gundam where it was get cut, and then you'd beg the producers to let you do 4 more episodes, but like
Battleship Yamato was supposed to be a 52 episode series, and it got cut.
Yeah. But I mean,
And that's okay.
this show still filled its whole year, but there were 2 weeks where they had to run a rerun, which I think that kind of thing was rare then. I'm not too sure. They make a big deal about it on the Anime 2 Days write up. I know that they did have to cut some story adaptation stuff out of it. Or at least they had to shorten some things. I don't think that any content from the book is excised at all. I think there are things that they spend less time on, but I don't think there's anything missing. In fact, they add like one episode of Anne of Green Gables. It is a story from Emily of New Moon where she believes she eats the poisoned apple. That's just like that's from Emily of New Moon. they put it in because they needed an extra storyline.
Yeah.
So they had a lot of room to work with. But again, going back to the pacing, I think it's very good. I think there's only maybe a very small handful of episodes in this show where I felt that the content was being spread maybe a little thin. But it has so much to work with, and the book offers so much to flesh out because there's so many things where Anne is explaining something that had happened, but you can flesh it out into an entire episode, and it works.
It's true. It does.
Yeah.
And this is what bugs me. It continues to bug me that this show is not commercially available in the English language market. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah. Well,
you're leaving money on the table, guys.
Well, technically, the English dub, which I touched on earlier, which was unknown until about 10 years ago, when it just kind of surfaced on YouTube. This South African dub, which apparently the studio that produced it only existed in the late early and early 90s around the during apartheid South Africa as well, or during apartheid period of South Africa. It was what was the studio called? Leafy Studios, based in Johannesburg, and it was apparently produced for SABC, their public broadcaster, and they did a version in English and Afrikaans. Apparently, I mean, I haven't seen this Afrikaans version, but for some reason, the only English dub for this 1979 series was done in South Africa, of all places, and it aired on TV there and like one other country, and was just gone for 30 years, and then someone threw it up on YouTube, and then that version was pulled down, and then apparently someone who actually has the rights to it uploaded this English dub again on YouTube, and that version is still there. You can legally watch it on YouTube, but that's not really ideal, because no one looks for shows on YouTube. You're looking on regular streaming services. So
you want to own the Blu-ray, guys. That's what you want. No, the interesting part about South Africa, this is parenthetical, they had an entire, like, apartheid meant that they were not getting any television or movies from the rest of the world, and nothing they made was going to get out to the rest of the world. So they had their own self-contained world of children's shows and science fiction shows and their own universe of weirdo television, trash television that you can watch now on YouTube, thanks to YouTube, but the rest of the world was not good. They had their own like fake Thunderbirds. They had a kids superhero show that was kind of like a Spider-Man kind of thing. They had insane children's TV shows, both in English and in Afrikaans.
Wow, that makes the fact
check it out,
that they of all places wound up making an English dub of this show absolutely even more insane.
Well, I think like because Sullivan Entertainment or whoever had the rights to Anne, they were already making their own versions of Anne of Green Gables. So the anime version, they could safely say, "Oh, you guys in South Africa want to dub it? Fine. No one else is ever going to see it. Knock yourself out."
Yeah, because Sullivan Entertainment has a little bit of a reputation for throwing their weight around as being like the go-to place for Anne of Green Gables adaptations, even though the story is now in the public domain, and technically anybody should be able to make one. But they still, I think there's still a lot of money for them to make off of their versions. And it's actually interesting. You would expect the Sullivan Entertainment versions to be like available on CBC Gem or ECTO in French, but they're not. They're on this independent streaming platform you've never heard of called Gazebo TV, and. And it's not actually a streaming service; it's a pay-to-own site. But like they must make a lot of money off of it doing it that way. And you can also watch the terrible Canadian animated version of Anne of Green Gables on that service as well. In fact, they have that whole thing on YouTube. Don't watch it; it's terrible.
Not great. It is absolutely not great.
Yeah.
It is. Wow. No, it's bad.
Yeah, but that actually could explain how the English dubbing for this got subjugated to like the South African market. But as we touched on earlier, the French dub, which was done by Cinelume in Montreal, that was done almost like a tie-in to the French version of the Sullivan Entertainment live action series, which is if you're not don't know what we're talking about, that's the one with Megan Follows.
Yeah.
And they popped up in the French Canadian market along with a Quebec translation of the book for the first time, all in that same period of time around the late 80s, which is interesting because that is right before the book would have gone into the public domain. So it's almost like there was this rush to make as much money as possible before it went into the public domain, because like who knows what's going to happen after that, right? But Patricia, I was hoping you could, since obviously the French version was your entry point to this series and to Anne of Green Gables in general, I was wondering if you could tell us a little about that dub.
Yeah, the dub. Well, we had Sophie Léger. She was the voice of Anne in the anime and also in the Sullivan version of the show. Dean Mousseau, who was Marilla Cuthbert, she was the same actress who played the voice of Marilla. The lady playing Josie Pye, I think that's the same voice also, but I'm not sure. But yeah, it was actually it's funny because when you watch the Sullivan version of the show and the anime, it's almost like the same thing. In my head, it was the same thing, probably because of the voices. So it was a very nice adaptation.
Inspired
The
casting,
French
yes.
adaptation was very. I think it was good, and Sophie Léger, she was also the voice. She's the voice of many actresses like Christina Ricci and Reese Witherspoon. You have Gilbert Lachance, who played Gilbert Blythe, actually, who was also well known for the raccoons. You
Yeah,
remember
Oh,
yeah,
that
yeah.
yes.
cartoon? Yeah. So the dub was amazing, and it was so amazing that at school I remember the show was on Sunday, and on Monday at school people were talking about. Actually, in my classroom, we talked about, oh, did you watch Anne yesterday? You've seen what happened. So it became like a little phenomenon here, and it's funny because, like we said earlier, Anne was not well known here. It was, and it became popular instantly after this.
That's how you know a show is a hit when kids talk about it the next day at school.
Yeah, especially among girls. I remember all my friends. We were all fans, and we can relate to the character. It was very amazing. It's funny that you can relate to a character that was alive that could be alive 100 years ago, more than a character from a movie right now. So
Oh yeah, yeah. It's interesting. It's a show for girls, and that was just not a thing on television for a long time. Like cartoons aimed at girls.
yeah, almost like like we said, the first shoujo, the first.
Yep, yep.
We can say that. And in France, they don't know a lot about. Well, they had the Quebec version, the French version of Quebec, but it was not a very big success, and it was. I think it was here very late
It
in
aired
in the.
quite a few
Yeah,
years later in France, and it was on like cable, on like a cable channel that not a lot of people got. So it's not a well known dub. I think it's seen as kind of a curiosity over there.
yeah, but they had the Sullivan series, but I don't know how popular it was in France. I don't think it was a very huge success, and it was called The Road to Happiness. It was not called Anne of Green Gables there. So, and it's funny because now the French people are discovering Anne with the new series with Anne Shirley, and they say, oh wow, this anime is in Canada. It's very good. It's very feel good show. You have to watch it, and they're kind of discovering Anne, but they didn't know about Anne a lot before.
Late to the party.
A bit late to the party, but
One thing that both the English dub and the French dub have in common is that they're both based on the German version. And that's actually probably where Cinelume licensed it from. It's interesting. I uploaded my Canadian Anime Heritage Minutes panel, which has some footage from the French dub of Anne of Green Gables on it. And I got one of the few copyright strikes I got was actually from the German rights holder of Anne of Green Gables. Apparently, they have a bunch of World Masterpiece Theater stuff and have like not a master license. Yeah, I guess kind of an international master license for a number of regions. And you can tell because the opening credits are the same in the German, French, and
yeah,
English version,
the
just
same
different
song.
translations. And I don't. Wait, actually, I'm curious, Patricia. What do you think of the French opening?
Well, I think it's great. It's like you said, it's the same as in German and in the English South Africa version.
Yeah,
I think it's great. But back then, I never, I didn't watch the original version, the original Japanese version. So for me, the French version is like the first one I heard. So for me, it's good. But you know, is it bad or good? I
yeah.
don't know. I
You
guess
you have your
it's
nostalgia, so it's kind of hard to assess what one you like better.
Yeah, exactly. And I said earlier that's what I wanted to say. I noticed on the internet that many English Canadians people didn't know about the 1979 version of Anne, and they were all excited about the Anne Shirley anime. And they said, "Oh wow, at least now we have an anime based in in Canada and all." But I was well. here we know about this anime for a long time. It's not new.
The new one has driven a lot of interest in the old one, apparently. That's what
Yeah.
I think Miles did a little write up about that on his white box site for a recent report. And it's unusual for that to happen. So I hope that people are finding it, despite the fact that it's even though there is the English dub on YouTube, it's not really easy to find the show, at least not in like a legal sense. One other thing about the English dub is that it does not sync properly with the Japanese version because there's lots of weird little timing cuts, apparently. However, some absolute madman did take the Japanese Blu-ray and make all the edits needed to sync the English dub to the Blu-ray. And you can, if you're a torrenting person, you can torrent a bilingual package that has everything perfectly synced. And man, I gotta say, I love maniacs who take the time to do these things, because that's it's a great way to experience it. And I do hope. Apparently, they're reissuing this show in Japan, a new home video release soon. I hope that might be a precursor to an international release, because I know Animego is putting out Romeo's Blue Skies, which is the first proper home video release of a World Masterpiece Theater title in English in North America ever. So hopefully it will lead to more. I hope that Anne of Green Gables is one of the things that it leads to. I hope they can get the English dub. I also especially hope they can get the French dub if that ever gets released here. And like these companies have worked with Cinelume before, so like they know who to talk to.
The World Masterpiece Theater series in general is just such a gold mine of terrific animation that every parent, every anime nerd parent would buy this stuff for their children, and how that's avoided getting any sort of a real release over here in years and years. Like the Little Women World Masterpiece, that got a couple of home video releases. I think their Tom Sawyer got a couple of VHS releases.
Tom Sawyer, didn't Saban produce an English dub that aired on Nickelodeon in the States?
Saban did Tom Sawyer. They did The Little Women. They dubbed one other one. They had their fingers in a lot of we'll get this and we'll get that, just so they could put it on the air somewhere, and all those tapes are sitting around somewhere. I think Bush Baby got dubbed.
It only aired no home video release. It aired on a few select markets in Canada only. On
there's a
provincial
friend of mine
educational
who has
stations, but
he's got the entire show. I'm like, oh, you should put it up on the Internet Archive. And he's like, oh, it'll just get taken down. I'm like, no, it won't. And it got taken down.
Yeah, we did an episode on Bush Baby with the person who had all the recordings and got it put online, and we all managed to nab it before it got pulled, because you can't even have that show on Internet Archive now.
It's like, it's Bush Baby. Just leave it up there, guys. Come on. But it's so many, and this is what I was, I'm always on about how Japanese animation was so popular and successful worldwide in the 70s and 80s and 90s. This stuff was making it into English language and Western markets, whether there was money there or not. It was just kind of, the pressure was just forcing it into our culture, And if you looked around the margins, you go to the kiddie section of the home video store, you're flipping channels on the TV, you're going to find Japanese animation there somewhere. And a lot of that is World Masterpiece Theater stuff. I mean, that Heidi got dubbed. There's a movie version of Heidi you can find on VHS. It's out there, dubbed in English.
And I consider myself lucky that in Quebec we had so many World Masterpiece Theater on TV when I was a kid. Yeah. It was my... that's how I discover, all these. I discovered Tom Sawyer with World Masterpiece Theater, and Heidi, and all these shows.
Well, you could watch them in the rest of Canada too if you were in a market that had Radio Canada, but obviously you would have to speak French to want to watch it. So
well, that's part of. I think what gave us kind of the edge of being anime nerds in like the 80s is we were sort of trained to kind of look at the margins to try to find this weird stuff that no one else was paying attention to. So we were always looking at foreign language cable television stations, which is how I first saw Future Boy Conan and Moon Mask Rider and a lot of other anime shows, because they were in Spanish. So we would have to like, oh, I'll have all of Future Boy Conan in Spanish.
Yeah, in
On my
Spanish
pad.
they had it's a bit like the French version. They had many version of these anime too.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's funny because we're talking about Vincent earlier, and he wrote to me that Rachel Lynn, Josie Pye, and Mr. Phillips, they had the same voice in the Sullivan version that in the anime. So
Yeah.
a lot of the cast were the same.
So just going back to the show itself, were there any episodes or scenes or details, apart from Gilbert getting a slate crashed over his head, that really stick out to you?
Well, my favorite is the one where Anne there, she's pretending to be dead, cast on away on a boat, and gets caught, gets trapped as the boat sinks, and Gilbert has to rescue her. That one, I don't want to say I've ever been trapped on a sinking boat and had to be rescued, but
We've all had that feeling.
sometimes you think your outboard motor is going to work, and then it doesn't, and the tide is going out, and you're like, oh, I don't have any way to get back to the dock, and I'm getting washed out to sea now. But the animation in that is beautiful. The backgrounds are gorgeous. It really looks like we are there on this dock. It really has that feel to it. And of course there's like a weird, it's got a little fantasy segment where they're dreaming they're in this medieval knights and everything. So,
that was so great. Like that's why having 50 episodes for this version of Anne of Green Gables, it just gave the breadth of time to do stuff like that. Which you can't do when you're crushing it down to 26 episodes.
I think we have that thing we do at Anime North, the old school class, the old school afternoon. And I screened that one last year, and this year I screened the episode where she falls off the roof and breaks her arm.
Yeah, the pacing is so fast in the new version.
I broke my wrist. I didn't break my arm, but I broke my wrist.
I really love the episodes right before the time skip.
Yeah.
And I think it's an episode like 36 or 37 or something where, you learn of, you get the foreshadowing of Matthew's heart condition, and you start to find out that Marilla might be having problems with her eyes. And there's this like beautiful, this gorgeously animated scene of Anne and Diana just kind of playing by the water. With there's no dialogue. It's just the background music, just sort of just flooding your senses. And it just seems to really beautifully capture this moment where, it's one of the last moments where they just kind of get to be children and be blissfully unaware or blissfully ignorant of a lot of the, the hardships of the world around them, and just, not knowing what is going to happen soon to Matthew and Marilla. I think just that feeling that it captures was really, really beautiful to me. I love that part. Another thing I really liked was the whole, how they made the amethyst brooch a two-parter in this show.
Yeah,
that is not a storyline that you would think in any other version would take 2 episodes, but they sell it like they do it just by selling how so important it is for Anne to go to this picnic. It is the most important thing in the entire world. And it really creates unbelievable stakes for the whole situation. And
they sell it. They really sell it.
And there's just so much depth to what Marilla is thinking and feeling the whole time as well. And one thing I really like is just how they just go so hard on just how they draw the amethyst brooch. I mean, that's the kind of thing it's not easy to do in hand-drawn cell animation. This is the kind of thing that is much easier to produce in digital animation. But just all the little intricate details they try to draw with the amethyst brooch, and they still don't quite succeed. They still don't quite sell the image of it, but you can just see the passion that goes into trying to create it. That really stuck out to me. And Patricia, what things stuck out for you?
Oh, I was about to say the brooch,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
brooch story. For me, I remember you said it was 2 episodes, actually?
Yes.
In my head, it was like 4 or 5, because it was so
It
long
could
and
have
so
it could have been.
intense.
It could have been with the way it's done here.
And I remember that she was grounded, and oh my God, I still remember it. And as you said, we can feel Marilla's anger in these episodes, and it's that's what I
Yeah.
remember. And in the new version of Anne, I think it's a few minutes.
It's 10
It's
minutes
the
in an
pacing is
episode.
so fast
And
now.
it's just like, oh, this is just another adventure. And like, it's done well. It's not to say that the new version did it badly. I think the new Anne Shirley, for the most part, even though it's heavily compressing events, like the first episode covers about 5 episodes. Or
Yeah.
what it took 5 episodes to
Wow.
cover in the 79 version. But I mean, it does it well. It focuses more on like lively character animation, which is exactly what Takahata felt wouldn't work in his approach. But this new version kind of actually shows that approach does work, which I thought was kind of cool. And it does compress the stories very well, but you just don't get. It just doesn't deliver what the old one is able to deliver with the type of artistry and insane passion and just breadth of time that they have they had to work on with the 70.
But I think they did well with the new. I think they did well with the new version,
Yeah.
because the new generations, they have short attention span.
Well, I don't want to be reductive and go that route, but
No,
we
know,
all have shorter
but
attention spans now.
maybe, but like my daughter is 12, and I know her generation. If it's too long, if it doesn't move enough, they lose interest. So I think this is a good version for the new generations today. I don't want to sound, like mean or anything,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I think it's a great for those who want to discover, and this is a great show. After this, if you like the show, well, you can watch the older show, and if you want more details,
Yeah.
you watch the old show.
And
That's kind of how I feel about that new Rose of Versailles movie that just came
Yeah.
out. It's like a speed run of the entire Rose of Versailles series. And if you like it, you can go back and you can watch the Osamu Dezaki TV show from 1979.
Exactly, and a lot of people were upset with the new Rose of Versailles movie, and they said, "Oh my God, they cut, the part with Dubarry, and it was all this was, resumed in a song, and well, they had to make choices, so they had to cut."
I think overall it worked, but
one last thing I wanted to touch on was actually something we probably should have talked about before, but the music by Akira Miyoshi and Kuroda Mori, and just the background music I think is really, it's a TV production budget on the music, but there's definitely it reaches cinematic heights that I don't think we really saw much even in other World Masterpiece Theater titles before. And the insert songs, which are I don't know, I'm curious to know what you guys think of the insert songs. They're very melodramatic and a little repetitive sometimes, which is also what we saw in Heidi and other World Masterpiece Theaters. But they're very effective.
Oh, I love the music. I love the music. I would have lost a lot of money betting that it was Joe Hisashi doing the soundtrack.
Yeah,
I would have totally lost money on that bet. But Miyoshi is terrific in this.
Yeah, it kind of sets the template for the way music was
Yeah.
approached in Studio Ghibli, even though it's a different composer.
It's like there's a lot of strings, but everything's got a tempo to it. There's movement to it that it's not ponderous the way a lot of orchestral anime music usually is around this time. I speak as a Yamato fan. Some of that music is a little ponderous. No, this music is the music is terrific.
And Patricia, they translated the insert songs into French, correct?
Yeah, they did. I think it was okay. I think it was good.
Yeah, I listened to some of them in the English dub. They're like, I was like, oh, this is fine. I assume it's a similar translation in both versions, but it's
It's
Probably.
tough to do. It's tough to bring that into English.
Yeah.
It almost never works.
I guess my final thought on the show also, I just find this is not so much about this show itself, but the Robert Browning quote, "God's in His heaven, all's right with the world," which is the title of the final episode and the final line in the original book. And I think it's so funny that it is so obviously like this show is so obviously the reason that it was used in Neon Genesis Evangelion as the motto for Nerve. And like there's been years of so many people like debating, oh, why did they use this Robert Browning quote as the Nerve motto? And it's just like it's just referencing this anime that Hideaki Anno's mentor worked on. Like that's literally all there is to it.
So much of that show is context.
Yeah.
It's like you have to know what they were watching when they made it. And if you didn't grow up in that with those contexts, you are not going to get their intent. And you have to, if you're in America, you just make up your own intent and go with it, which is part of the fun of being an anime nerd when you don't speak Japanese. With something like Anne of Green Gables, especially, we've got the original text right here. You can go find it in any library or bookstore, So there's no ambiguity about what's happening in Anne of Green Gables.
I think that might be it. I had a couple of leftover questions I think we kind of touched on earlier. How do you think this Anne of Green Gables, Akage no Anne, compares to other World Masterpiece Theater titles? I mean, this is the best one I've watched. I've watched a few of them. I think that this is a massive success of the format that they created for these shows. I think of all the ones
Have you seen Perrin Story?
No, I have not seen that one.
See, I did not. I was like, well, someone fan sub Perrin Story. Let's watch Perrin Story. I wonder what this is going to be like. And I got hooked on Perrin Story.
Oh.
I mean, I think Anne of Green Gables is better, but there's a scene in Perrin Story where a donkey shows up, and if you are not crying when that donkey shows up, you are made of stone. And I'm like, how did this show do this to me? With a donkey. I'm a grown-ass man, But that's a pretty good show. And again, it expands a lot on the original text, but I think in a helpful way. But there's a ton of World Masterpiece Theater shows. I haven't seen nearly all of them, So, the interesting part is that the World Masterpiece stuff is only a subset of all the other anime titles that are based on Western works, whether it's science fiction stuff or children's books or you name it. They have a cottage industry of adapting what would be foreign material.
Yeah, I mean we have Osamu Dazaki's Nobody's Boy Remy, which just came out here on Blu-ray, and that's a completely different studio, different team, essentially doing the same kind of thing around the same time.
TMS did a few of those themselves. He did Treasure Island for TMS.
Treasure Island, yes.
Perrin and Nobody's Boy Remy is the same author. It's Hector Malo, which is very dramatic.
Did Perrin air in Quebec?
No, in France, but not in Quebec.
Yeah, one of the France got everything.
And the interest, like that Treasure Island Dazaki did, is like the third version of Treasure Island that's in anime. There's like 4 different versions of Little Women. I mean, of course, now there are how many versions of Anne of Green Gables? It's like they keep going back to the well on this stuff. Maybe they'll remake Lensman and make it good this time. Speaking of works from Western authors, they don't need to remake Lensman. Don't do that. Anyway, I do want to say Anne of Green Gables might be the best World Masterpiece Theater. Just pound for pound, when you take everything into consideration, it might actually be the best.
Okay.
In my opinion, Anne, of course, Anne is one of the best, but I also like Tom Sawyer, Huckleberry Finn. And I also like one that probably nobody knows, but of course, maybe you guys, Porfi, the Our Friend of Sumatra. That's a recent work.
I haven't seen it. I've seen pictures of it, but I haven't watched it.
That's very dramatic. There was an earthquake in Greece, and it's based on a novel called The Orphan of Sumatra, and it's very dramatic. And the One Masterpiece version of Les Miserables it's also nice. Yeah.
Is there an entire show for that?
Les Miserables.
I've
Yeah,
seen a film.
yeah. There is a show.
Okay.
I think it was one of the
Wow.
later World Masterpiece Theater ones, like in
Yeah, yeah.
like in the 2000s.
Okay. Yeah.
That's why Dave doesn't know about it.
Well, it's like every year there's another one, man. It's like you can't keep up. No, actually,
That's true.
there was like want to say Tatsunoko did it, and a telefilm, a TV movie based on Les Mis, and they did 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea as a science fiction thing. They did their own Daddy Longlegs, I think, and then later Daddy Longlegs was a World Masterpiece Theater show.
And that's the 50th anniversary of Nippon Animation this year. You know
Oh,
that?
that's right. That's right. That's right. Because they had that video, right? The 50th animation, 50th anniversary video.
All right, I think that about does it for this episode. Unless anyone had any final thoughts.
Yeah, we need this show on Blu-ray in the Western markets. Come on, Discotheque. Let's. It's cash on it's money leaving on the table, guys. Let's get going on
Anime
this.
goes getting closer to these classic World Masterpiece Theaters, but we'll see. We'll see if they can pull it off.
Let's do it, Animego.
Yeah.
Let's do it. I will support a crowdfund Kickstarter for this project if it has to happen. If you have to do it, maybe we can get the government of PEI. We can get someone new in the provincial government of PEI because apparently they own part of Anne. That's my understanding, is that they own part of the copyright of the Anne of Green Gables thing is owned by the province of Prince Edward Island.
Yeah, I think so. I heard that too.
So, some trickery that lets them get around the public domain thing, surely.
Yeah, like this may be a good campaign angle for someone looking to get into the provincial government and PEI. Elect me, and I will bring the 79 Anne of Green Gables to you. Maybe? I don't know.
It's funny because I saw on CBC there was they said that PEI is hoping that the new Anne Shirley show will bring more tourists to the island because they're suffering now. Their tourism isn't what it used to be.
Well, it's been a few months, so I wonder if it is having an impact. We'd probably start seeing that about now.
I really don't know. I plan to go next year with my family, but I don't know.
Didn't you go to Jesse? Didn't you go to Hokkaido? Didn't you go to the Anne? What's left of the Anne?
I wish I did go to Hokkaido. I did not venture out to Ashibetsu to go to the abandoned Anne of Green Gables theme park. That's something we didn't talk about. In Japan they recreated Avonlea in the middle of, in Hokkaido, because that's the only place in Japan you're going to find space to do something like that. But they made an entire recreation of it. It was called Canadian Land. It shut down in the 90s when all of the theme parks shut down in Japan because of the bubble collapse.
That's right, yeah.
But it was still it's still there. It's still kind of maintained by some people who live in the area, but those efforts are dwindling. I think there was an organized effort to keep it going that has ended, and there's still maybe some people trying their best. But it's there. If you go to Hokkaido and you rent a car and you're willing to go out far enough, you can probably get there. And there are Google reviews of it you can find online as well. And some people still think it's okay. Some people are very disappointed by the current state of it.
Is it legal to go there? Because I know in Japan they don't like urbex. They don't like when people ventures in abandoned places. You can get arrested for that.
Yeah, I haven't heard of it being illegal to go there. I think people are still doing it, but I think fewer people are going, and they're generally disappointed by what they find.
Can't think of a better way to get arrested in Japan than trespassing on Canadian land.
Yeah,
they should open it back up. I'll work there.
This should be a diplomatic issue, frankly.
Yes. Cause an international incident. Just hire us to come work at Canadian land. We will be honest to God Canadians. I'll talk about maple syrup all day long. I don't care.
Yeah, I know that theme park, if you ever watched, there was a GTO live action movie in the late 90s where they part of the film is set there. And it's not a good movie, but it's just like, oh, that's an appearance for that thing. That's
the big selling point. We're in this amusement park.
Okay. I think we'll wrap up there. Yeah, Patricia, is there anything that people can expect to see you working on soon or find you online? Any panels at upcoming conventions?
Well, Otakuton is coming in Montreal in August, so you can all watch their page on the internet on Facebook, and then as you know, I'm part of the Nadeshiko Club, so you can find our page on the internet. You can subscribe to our group if you want.
Yeah,
So
it's on Facebook.
I'm not going to Otakuton, unfortunately.
Oh,
My
okay.
all my friends, most of the club will be there. Pierre, my husband, will be there also. Vincent, and I won't go, unfortunately. So
I will be at Otakuthon this year.
oh,
Yeah, I bought my plane
we'll
tickets
miss
and
you
booked the
again.
hotel. So
Oh,
if you want to reconsider, you'll catch me there. And hopefully, I've submitted panels. Hopefully, I'll be doing at least one. It's pretty
okay.
tough to get them approved there, but I'm going for it.
Okay, well, I hope you'll be approved.
And Dave, where can folks find you?
Well, I'm going to be the next anime convention I'm going to be doing, I think, is going to be Anime Week in Atlanta in December in Atlanta. Probably be doing a bunch of panels there and Anime Hell and all that sort of stuff. That's downtown Atlanta now. For the rest of the year, I don't know what I'm going to be doing. I'm taking it easy. You can find me. My anime blog is letsanime.blogspot.com, and you can find me on the Blue Sky at Terra B Funhouse. And as always, every week, my wife Shanel and myself, we make fun of a stupid comic at MrKitty.net. And that's also, we have a bunch of our own comics up there. And we're always doing something new and crazy, or at least trying to anyway. Because there's a never-ending supply of bad comic books to make fun of. We're finding that out. It's never going to end. We're at like 904, I think, is the latest installment of Stupid Comics.
I can't believe you do one of those every week. Like,
well, we take breaks and
yeah.
stuff, but yeah, it's every week. Yeah. Every week. I think the next thing, like, I try to do a Let's Anime column every month, and I don't generally, like, I try. I don't always make it, but I try, and I should have something up for June. I had something up for May, and I wrote a big Dagger of Kamui article that was up in April. And I'm hoping to get a little more stuff going on there. And that might be it. I'm going to take it easy the rest of the summer, I think. I'm going to go to the beach.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for tuning in to Zonan Canada. You can find me on Blue Sky at jbetteridge or email zonancanada@gmail.com. The theme song is by Ultra Klystron. That can be found on his album Packet Flood. And yeah, please subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts or YouTube Music, Spotify, whatever you use to find your podcasts. I'll see you again.
緩やかな丘を縫って駆けてくる馬車迎えに来るの迎えに来るのね誰かが私を連れて行くのね白い花の道へ風のふるさとへ連れて行くのね連れて行くのね
Hello there, little carrot.